Hi, I'm Chris Sangster, and welcome back to the studio. Today, our journey through Logic Pro's control bar continues. If you're new to the channel, recently I've been doing a breakdown of each of the sections and windows of Logic Pro. We started with the control bar, but because there are just so many features in the control bar, I've had to split this into 4 separate videos. And this is the third of those 4 videos. If you need to get caught up, the playlist is right here in the card. But today, we're going to be examining the LCD. Yep, that is really the technical name for this section here in the middle of the control bar. I believe that name comes from the analog hardware days. Think about a synthesizer, maybe even your MIDI keyboard has one. There will often be an LCD screen that displays relevant information and allows for menu browsing and settings changes. This was certainly the case on many digital recording consoles, and since those were the direct predecessors to modern digital audio workstations like Logic Pro, the LCD name has stuck for this informational section. However, the LCD in Logic is not just a static display of information. It has many powerful features that are worth examining. All right, let's again right-click in a blank space in the control bar to open the Customize Control Bar and Display menu, so that we can see all of the options available to us in the LCD. At the top of the LCD section, we see this drop-down menu, which allows us to choose between different default views of the LCD. Each display has its own combination of LCD features. We'll have a look at the specific configuration of each in a moment, but in order to fully understand the features of the LCD, let's choose Custom from this menu so that we can choose freely the features we want to enable. The first option, Position Time/Beats, displays the current playhead position in the leftmost section of the LCD. It displays both minutes and seconds up top and bars and beats right below. We can also click and drag in this display or double click and type in a position to move the playhead. Pretty simple, and for me, pretty useless most of the time. I typically just leave this off. Next up, we have a display of the position of the locators or punch locators. By default, this is set to show the left and right edges of a cycle range. And like the playhead position display, it allows you to change it by clicking and dragging or double clicking and typing. But there are a few different options for this display. First, in the Customize menu, we see that we can change the display from left-right to left-length. Left length still shows the left edge or starting position of the cycle range on top, but instead of showing the right edge or end position of the cycle range on the bottom, it now displays the total length of the cycle range on the bottom. Unlike the playhead position, which is displayed in both minutes and seconds and bars and beats, the locators display shows only bars and beats. And it's actually worth taking a slight detour here to explain what these numbers mean, because we see this style of time measurement all over Logic Pro. The bars and beats style of time measurement is comprised of 4 numbers: the bar, the beat, the division, and the tick, with each being a smaller subsection of the previous number. Let's take this top number as an example. The current cycle range is starting at 5, 2, 2, 1. What does that mean exactly? It means that the position is the 5th bar of the project, the 2nd beat of that bar, the 2nd division of that beat, and the 1st tick of that division. The bar number is simply how many measures since the start of the session, but the other numbers are dependent on a few things. The first of which is the time signature. Here in 4/4, we would have 4 beats or 4 quarter notes per measure. So this second number can be anything 1 through 4 in this time signature. The division number is dependent on the division value, which we can also see displayed in the LCD right underneath the time signature. More about that in a moment, but for now just know that this changes how many subdivisions of those 4 quarter notes we have per measure in our time display. Right now it is set to /16 or 16th notes, meaning that we will have 4 divisions of each of the 4 quarter notes. So in this setting, the division number can again be set 1 through 4. As it is set now, the cycle is starting on the 2nd 16th note after the 2nd quarter note in the 5th bar. The final number is a bit less music theory oriented and more DAW specific. In a digital audio workstation, the smallest units of musical time, those subdivisions of the beat, are not small enough to keep everything synchronized. So Logic further divides musical time into even smaller units called ticks. 960 of them for every one quarter note. The ticks display here in the LCD will count up in ticks until we get to the next division of the beat. So with our division set to 16th notes, we can travel 240 ticks before we arrive at the next 16th note. Returning to the locator's display options in the LCD, not only can this show the position of the cycle range in left-right or left-length configurations, it will also display the position of the auto punch range when that feature is enabled. Auto punch will be discussed in detail in our final control bar video, but as a quick preview, auto punch allows you to define a set recording range for the project, where we can hit record much earlier in the project and then have Logic only record for a predetermined amount of time. A very powerful feature for those of us recording ourselves. Moving on, we have the ability to display both the sample rate and the buffer size of the project in the LCD. I absolutely love having this option. The buffer size display is actually relatively new. I believe it was an update in Logic version 11. This feature helps us to have a quick glance to make sure the sample rate of Logic matches the sample rate of our interface or any other connected devices. A must-have in my opinion, because I really hate having to go through the menus just to confirm that the sample rate is correct. But it also allows us to quickly change the buffer size without having to go menu diving. This can be especially helpful for those of you that are working on underpowered computers that necessitate that dance of lowering the buffer size to record without latency, but then raising the buffer size back up to play complex sessions. Next up, we have Vary Speed, one of my all-time favorite Logic Pro features, and it is only available in the LCD. It is a feature that has so many great uses that it definitely needs its own deep dive video, but I'll give an overview here. Vary Speed is essentially an emulation of a feature of tape machines, wherein you could adjust the speed of a machine in between its standard settings in order to affect the pitch and tempo of a recording. If we enable Vary Speed in the LCD and then click where it says Vary Speed, we'll see that in Logic Pro we actually have 3 different modes. First, there's traditional Vary Speed, which like its analog predecessors will speed up and pitch up or slow down and pitch down the entire song. We then have a mode called Speed Only, which will only speed up or slow down the entire song and not affect the pitch. And finally, we have a mode called Vary Speed and MIDI, which will do the same thing as the Vary Speed mode with the added benefit of transposing any external MIDI devices you have linked to your session via an external MIDI track. The big thing to understand about Vary Speed is that it is working on the playback of the entire track. It is not actually changing anything about your individual tracks, it is only affecting the playback of them, just like Vary Speed on a tape machine. Those original tracks were already printed into the tape that the tape machine was playing, and so too are your tracks in the DAW with respect to Vary Speed. But there is a nuance between the Vary Speed setting and the Speed Only setting to understand. The Vary Speed settings are simply changing the tempo and resulting pitch of the playback by slightly altering the sample rate of playback. This allows you to record at a different tempo and pitch and have that recording with Vary Speed on sound totally normal. Of course, if you were to turn Vary Speed off again, the speed and pitch of your recording would change. That's actually how they created the vocals for Alvin and the Chipmunks, by speeding it up with Vary Speed. However, the Speed Only setting is doing a much more complex process in the background to change the speed but maintain the pitch, which results in an alteration to the sound of any recordings made with it on. They'll always sound a little funky.
Every little thing,
Every little thing, every little thing, every little thing, every little thing, every little thing. The rub of all of this is the traditional vari-speed setting is a bit more useful than the speed-only setting, and I think flex time is a much better option for altering just the speed of your tracks. Again, remember, vari-speed is only working on playback, so it is not connected in any way to flex time or the global tempo track. With all that said, let's stick with traditional vari-speed mode and see what we can do. By default, we can change the speed and pitch by a given percent. But if we click on the percent icon, we see we get a few more choices. Resulting tempo allows us to select a specific BPM to set the vari-speed to. Detune allows us to set an amount of pitch change to set the vari-speed to. And of course, because with vari-speed, tempo and pitch are locked together, in both of these cases, the tempo or pitch will follow along with the change in its counterpart. And finally, we have tuning reference, which allows us to set the vari-speed amount by deviating from the traditional A equals 440 Hz tuning standard. This is actually a quick and easy way to audition what your song would sound like at a different tuning standard, like the Baroque music tuning of 415 Hz or the ever controversial 432 Hz. Now, let's record some vocals with vari-speed on. As you can hear, unlike the speed-only example, they sound totally normal with vari-speed on, none of that odd quality. Every little thing, every little thing. But if we set it back to 0, now I'm a cartoon mouse, a chipmunk, whatever. This workflow has a lot more creative uses than just cartoonish vocal effects. As I mentioned, I think a deep dive video on vari-speed is in the future of this channel, so get subscribed to be the first to check that out. Before we continue on with the video, I want to show you how to get the most out of Logic Pro. Listen, I love Logic, but the truth is that right out of the box, or should I say right out of the App Store, it is not fully optimized for musicians, producers, and audio engineers. There are just some truly strange default settings in Logic Pro. That's why I created the Logic Pro Optimization Guide, a free to download video guide and accompanying PDF cheat sheet that walks you through step by step all of the settings to change in order to get the most out of Logic Pro. These setting changes will benefit first-time Logic Pro users and wily Logic Pro vets alike. I truly believe that by changing these settings, you will not only improve your workflow, but actually speed up your music making process. So, if you want to take control of the DAW and optimize Logic Pro, click the link in the description box below the like button and download the Logic Pro Optimization Guide. It's all yours, completely free. Next up, the simplest but also possibly the most useful display in the LCD, the tempo. This is where we can see at a glance and double click to change the tempo of our project. Do note though, if we have tempo changes written into the tempo global track and we try to change the project tempo in the LCD, we get this dialog box alerting us to the fact that we have to make any more tempo changes in the global track. Another important thing to know about changing the tempo in Logic Pro is that when you double click and change the tempo in the LCD, the MIDI tracks, the software instrument tracks, automatically follow along with that tempo change. But if we want our audio tracks to follow along with the tempo change, we have to enable flex time on them first. An extra control that is connected to the project tempo is the project tempo mode, and we can change that by clicking and holding on the menu right underneath the tempo. Right now, it is set to keep tempo. We have 3 options, and they all change how Logic handles the tempo processing of imported or recorded audio files. Keep project tempo does not change the project tempo at all when an audio file is imported or recorded. Adapt project tempo creates a tempo map in the global tempo track to match the project tempo to that of an imported audio file. This can be very helpful if you're remixing or creating a mashup between two songs. Simply by setting Adapt Tempo mode, the tempo of the songs will be automatically analyzed and set in the global tempo track. And finally, automatic mode. This allows Logic to decide for itself whether to use keep or adapt mode based on the situation. For example, if we record with the metronome on, Logic will choose keep mode. But if we import an audio file into a blank session with no other tracks, it will choose adapt mode. Next up, time signature and division. We touched on this a bit earlier, but this will give us a display of our time signature, 4/4 in this session, and right below it, our beat division. The time signature portion is pretty simple and works very similar to the tempo. Double click it in the LCD to change it for the whole project, and if we want multiple meter shifts in one song, we set those up in the signature global track. The division setting has a few extra uses though. We already discussed how it affects the numbers in the bars and beats style time displays, but perhaps its most important function is that it changes the values displayed on both the ruler in the main window and the grid in the piano roll. In the ruler, we can see this change most simply if we switch from /16, where we clearly see 4 lines per beat representing those 16th note divisions, to /12, where we now see 3 small lines per beat representing 8th note triplets. And if we go down to /8, we get just 2 lines per beat, 1 for every 8th note. But it is how the division changes the piano roll that I think is the most important. Sometimes when programming MIDI notes in the piano roll, we want more grid lines to help us perfectly line up our notes. Increasing the division in the LCD will increase the amount of grid lines in the piano roll. This is also very helpful when we want to program triplets. For example, we can change the division to /12, and now we have grid lines in the piano roll that represent 8th note triplets. So we can simply line our MIDI notes up with these grid lines and easily create that triplet feel. One extra feature of the division control is that it can affect the rhythm of the metronome. The metronome will be covered in the final control bar video, but if we navigate to the metronome settings, we can see its connection to the division control. We can make the metronome click on 4 different time scales, and one of those is of course division. So if we're recording a tough triplet pattern in a 4/4 project, we could deselect bar, group, and beat and leave just division ticked on. Then with a /12 division setting, we get a triplet pattern in the metronome. Moving on, we have key signature / project end. The key signature is pretty self-explanatory. It behaves much in the same way as the tempo and time signature controls, in that it sets the key signature for the entire project, and multiple key changes must be set in the signature global track. However, there is less in a typical Logic session that is dependent upon the set key signature than the tempo and time signature. The most useful one is Apple loops. Imported Apple loops will always automatically conform to the root note of the set project key. So note that the Apple loops will not change key quality. Minor loops stay minor, major loops stay major, but they do conform to the root note of the project key, making that the new tonic of the key that the Apple loop is in. Another important function of the key signature is that it can transpose the chord track and any session player regions that are tied to it. If we have, say, this session keyboard player region playing this progression that's written in the chord track, changing the project key will prompt this pop-up menu that asks you if you want to transpose the chord track. Select transpose and we can see that our chord track and the session player have been transposed into the new key. Strangely enough, the function that is paired with the key signature is the project length. Not really sure why, but that just displays the total number of bars currently active in the project. You can add or subtract to the total length of the project by changing this number, the same way you can drag the ruler at the end of the project. The second to last LCD feature is MIDI Activity in/out. This shows you the current MIDI signal being received on top and the signal currently being sent out on the bottom. It can display the MIDI control number and the velocity that is being received, like when I press down my sustain pedal. Or it can display the musical notes that a MIDI keyboard is playing. It can even display what chord is currently being displayed on a connected MIDI keyboard. This can be especially helpful if you're not an expert in music theory and want to know what chord is being made by a certain combination of notes. This display is also helpful to fix any issues with a connected MIDI device. For example, if there's a hung note from a MIDI keyboard, one that just won't turn off even after you're done playing the keys, simply double click in the top portion of this display to fully reset all incoming MIDI signals. And the final display option for the LCD is the performance meter. This shows us the current usage by Logic Pro of both our CPU and internal hard drive. A fun little trick with the performance meter is that if you double click it in the LCD, it opens in a separate window. If you hold Command and double click it, it opens in a bigger window. And if you hold Control, Option, and Command and double click it, it opens in an even bigger window. Don't know why you would need this, but it's kind of fun. In one of these separate performance meter windows, we can see a more detailed breakdown of exactly how Logic Pro is dividing its usage across the processing threads that are available on our system. The performance meter is most helpful for identifying which tasks or plugins are most intensive for the system, which can help us to diagnose problems and to know which tracks would be good to bounce in place in order to help prevent freezes and crashes. A small extra feature of the LCD is that when additional content is downloading, such as new Apple loops, a download progress bar will be shown at the bottom of the LCD. This brings us to the final unique feature of the LCD, and that is this disclosure triangle on the far right. Unlike the other sections of the control bar, the LCD has its own separate menu. In it, we can quickly change between those different default views. So here's a quick rundown of what each of those views contain. Beats and Project displays the playhead position in a simplified bars and beats format alongside the three project properties: tempo, key, and time signature. Beats and Project Large displays the same, but breaks out key and time signatures into their own separate sections. Beats and Time displays only the playhead position in both the simplified bars and beats scale and minutes and seconds scale. Beats and Time Large expands these scales to bars, beats, divisions, and ticks, and hours, minutes, seconds, frames, and subframes. Beats displays just the playhead position on a full bars and beats scale, and Time displays just the playhead position on a full minutes and seconds scale. And of course, Custom allows us to choose which functions we want displayed from the customized control bar menu, which we can also access through this side menu of the LCD. Two other interesting views that can be accessed from this menu are the giant beats and giant time displays. This opens a separate window that displays the current playhead position in either a full bars and beats scale or a full minutes and seconds scale. And just like those scales in the LCD, we can scrub the playhead around the session by clicking and dragging or double clicking and typing in these windows. I like to have the giant time display open when working on film post-production projects because it allows me to verify that the audio and video time codes are always staying in sync, and also allows me to drop in audio or make changes at exact time code spots without having to navigate in the ruler. And the final thing to discuss about the LCD are these two final options in the menu. We have the ability to save and recall our custom settings of the LCD. This is a massively undervalued aspect in my opinion. Once we set up the LCD the way we like it, with all of the relevant features we need displayed, we can come to this menu and choose Save as Defaults. Then every new project we create will automatically have this LCD setup. And we can easily apply it to sessions we've already created by simply coming to this menu in those sessions and choosing Apply Defaults. Super handy. There we go. That is a full breakdown of all of the displays and functions of the LCD in Logic Pro. In my opinion, it is a very important section to get the hang of using. It allows access to some cool features like Vari Speed, gives easy control over the project parameters, allows us to troubleshoot MIDI and CPU issues, and is very customizable and savable. I hope you found this video helpful. If you do have any questions about the LCD, the control bar, or just Logic Pro in general, please leave them in the comments below. I would be happy to answer them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the studio next time. Thanks.